Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Unified Care Record New and Next. Thank you for finding this session conference room 301, moved from right next door, 302. We apologize for the inconvenience. My name is Sebastian Musielak. I am the Senior Product Manager on the FHIR Operations Scrum team. Today I'll be presenting this presentation with this man here who has asked me kindly not to introduce him as fearless leader, and so I will simply call him Matt Spielman.
Not quite what I meant.
Instructions unclear. For our agenda today, we're going to be talking about some of the new features and enhancements that the FHIR Operations team has made available for the other products in the FHIR product suite. Matt is going to be talking about some of the specific features and enhancements in the Unified Care Record, and together we're going to be going over some of the future roadmap items for the next 18 or so months. Hopefully by the end of this presentation you'll have a very good idea of where we would like to go with the FHIR platform. So let's get started. The first thing I'd like to mention is that we've been listening to you. We've had a lot of discussions with customers, and we have synthesized a lot of your requests, a lot of your desires, a lot of your problem areas, and have found two very common themes here. So theme number one, total cost of ownership. So the cost of managing a large FHIR deployment can be high. There are a lot of factors that influence it. So for the last two releases, we've been incrementally changing the product to reduce storage costs, and we will continue to do so in the future. You've asked for a more centralized tools and configuration, and we are working on creating a centralized administration mechanism. Single pane of glass, if you would, for the entirety of a FHIR federation. You've asked for technology and platform optimization. Everyone here has a very expensive set of servers that function at a very, very high level, but it's not always used to that full extent. So is there any kind of optimization that can be had? We're designing new methods for maximizing performance. The other item is time to value. So FHIR implementations, when starting from scratch, can take a long time and be very complex. We're working on introducing automation, adding some documentation, and providing more out-of-the-box solutions. We have a presentation, I think it's later today or tomorrow, specifically for time to value, where Leah is going to be talking more about that. You've also asked for better tools for integration and deployment, and we are working on new deployment options for the Unified Care Record and the entire FHIR product suite. So, what's new in HS Ops? The first thing I'd like to talk about is our enhanced login experience. So, we introduced FHIR single sign-on in 2020.1. We have been incrementally improving it since that time. At this point, FHIR single sign-on and our universal login application are a full-featured product, right? The login page has all of the bells and whistles that you would expect a login page to have. Reset forgotten password request, multi-factor authentication, localization, compliance, accessibility compliance. And so we urge you, please take a look. So here is a screenshot of our basic login page. This is the login page for single sign-on if you don't have any customization enabled. This is our forgotten password reset page. This is all skinnable stuff, so you can add whatever colors, whatever logos you want to this. Here's our localization. So right from the main page, the first time somebody logs in, when they request the page, they can choose Arabic, Arabic, German, English, UK, US, French, Italian, Dutch, and Portuguese. This is an example of our custom login page. So all of the text here that you see, you can't see it. It's too far away. But every bit of text here is customizable with no code whatsoever. You don't have to put, no code is required here. You can literally edit this text in place as it is. And you can use custom style pages, CSS pages to, again, change the layout a little bit as you wish and add custom logos and such. Additionally, on the back end, we now have additional support for third-party OAuth authorization servers. So if your enterprise organization uses Okta as your OAuth authorization server, if you use Azure as your authorization server, you can continue to use that and continue to use FHIR SSO. We also added support for organizations in the user registry, which will allow for additional notification options. So if you want to have notifications to an entire organization, you can do that too. Switching gears a little bit, let's talk about some operational enhancements. We kind of went over this just a little bit already. Reducing storage requirements has been the low-hanging fruit that we've worked on over the past 6 to 12 months. Our audit repository, the ATNA repository, the aggregation table, a lot of you folks have your own names for it. We've added additional purging mechanisms and an archiving mechanism. It's manual at this point, but it's fully documented and it will be automated at some point in the future. For edge gateways, for deployments that don't use the ODS, edge gateways store audit data on the edge gateways themselves. In some cases, 50% or more of an edge gateway might be audit data. We now have out-of-the-box methods for storing that audit data in a separate database for new deployments, for new edge gateways, and for existing ones in future releases, we'll have purging mechanisms as well. So for archiving, this is an example here. We have our aggregation instance, and you can see that there is a couple of lines for our 2022 audit data, our 2021 audit data, and of course that is our Tier 2 storage. We don't really need it to be that fast because how often do we really query that data? Not very often. But our current data for this year, for 2023, that's going to be on our fast storage, our solid state storage. And this is just a graphic showing how we're separating audit data in new edge gateway deployments to its own database over here. Moving on with operational enhancements, some items related to configuration and deployment. For those folks that have large deployments with large numbers of namespaces on a single instance, you can now activate those namespaces all in parallel instead of one at a time, so that's nice. Activation log files are now separated by namespace. We have a demo API to set up a secure environment. So if you want to use SSO, you are required to have a secure web server. All of the traffic must be over HTTPS, and we have an API to set that up for you right out of the box, because who wants to do that manually? We also have cross-version FHIR product compatibility. So products such as the clinical viewer, such as provider directory, such as patient index, can work with older versions of the registry. So you can upgrade one component at a time and have support for that configuration. One of the last things I want to talk about is some of our public documentation. So we've always relied on the IRIS documentation for supported technology, things like supported platforms, browsers, upgrade paths, et cetera, et cetera. That was not ideal. It caused some confusion between versions, confusion for customers. So now we have our own button on docs.intersystems.com and the HealthShare documentation for things like the upgrade paths specific to HealthShare, the platforms, browsers specific to HealthShare, not talking about IRIS, not talking about IRIS for Health, specific to HealthShare and HealthShare products. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to Matt now.
Hi, everybody. So it's really awesome to see everybody again. It's been a while. I like seeing your faces. So I'm going to be talking about more on sort of the application side of things, what we've been working on for the Unified Care Record. And I want to start out by talking about our continued support for our payer customers and payer data exchange use cases. In particular, CMS 9115F calls out the need for peer-to-peer data exchange of clinical data. They didn't actually specify currently what the mechanism for that is going to be. However, we have added support now for the PDEX implementation guide from the Da Vinci project. And we expect that when the next set of rules get finalized, sometime in 2023, that PDEX is going to be a requirement. But the nice thing is you can still use it right now to satisfy the requirements of peer-to-peer data exchange with the current rule set. And in support of that as well, we've added a new type of edge gateway that you can deploy within the Unified Care Record. So this is a FHIR edge gateway specific to payer-to-payer data exchange use cases. And I want to be very clear about that. This is not a general purpose one. This is really targeted specifically for that and designed for those flows and use cases. And the way it works is the edge gateway will query another system, typically another payer, and receive back a bundle of FHIR resources that represent the clinical data for that patient. We will then obviously take that data in, use our transforms to normalize all that data to SDA, and then it's available within the Unified Care Record either through the FHIR gateway on the ODS or the clinical viewer or any of the other ones. So again, I just want to make sure to stress though, this is very specific to the peer-to-peer use case. If you have other use cases around ingestion of FHIR data into the Unified Care Record, please talk to me or talk to Leah or talk to Prachi and help us understand what problems you're trying to solve by that. And the nice thing is now that we've solved this one, the next one's going to be a much less of a lift in order to implement. Additionally, we've continued to expand the data domains that SDA covers. We have 2 new data domains in SDA, 2 new Streamlit types that we're supporting. One of them is TAS, which is in support of our care community application, but is available for use. And then additionally, we've had a number of customers who are actually IRIS for Health and Health Connect customers who leverage the transformations that we provide to go from HL7v2, CDA, FHIR to SDA, and then out to another standard on the other end as part of their routing of messages to support their business needs. And one of the things that became really clear is that for organizations that have made decisions to make all of their internal communication FHIR-based, but still preserve the metadata that tends to be associated with, for example, an HL7v2 message. So if you sort of, for those of you who have seen HL7v2 before, you've got your pipes and your carrots, you've got an MSH at the top that says which system is sending the data, where it's sending it to, what the system is, sequence identifiers, and all other kinds of things. And you want to be able to propagate a lot of that data through. And so the message header streamlet facilitates essentially maintaining parity in terms of a message comes in and a message goes out the other end. It's just you're sending out a FHIR message on the other end. Additionally, we were already pretty close to full coverage of US CDI prior to, well, since the last time we talked, but we basically closed the gap now. So we had 3 properties in that we needed to have support for around gender and problems and health concerns. We added those in, so we now have full coverage of the entire US CDI data set within the SDA data model. And so with that, I'll talk about now sort of prospectively what we're going to be doing over the next year and a half in the UCR specifically. So one of the things, and this goes along with sort of what Sebastian was talking about hearing your feedback and really trying to turn it into actionable things on our roadmap. And we know that in addition to the challenges of standing up and managing and monitoring a HealthShare deployment, we also know that on the implementation side, there are a lot of things that we do right now that require a developer in order to achieve that goal. So for example, if you are trying to extend the SDA data model or add your own custom domain to the SDA data model, these are currently development activities. And obviously that can be challenging because you've got now 2 people that need to be involved, potentially 3. You've got your clinical analyst, you've got your clinician who's actually advising, and then your developer who has to make all that work. Ideally, we can elevate that activity to the level of the people who actually have the knowledge. So this is something that we're starting to work on now. It's a really high priority for us to really get to, as Jonathan described, sort of a low-code or no-code way of managing the data model and expanding the data model. And the same thing applies to our transformations as well. So, and this is not just making sure that our transformations are easier to extend and service, but also so that it's easier for them to be reviewable by a clinician. You know, it's taking data in one format and turning it into another format is not a zero risk endeavor, particularly in healthcare. And so we want to be able to take the same sorts of low code and no code experiences and be able to make sure that we have that available so that clinicians can both inform the design of those transforms, but also be able to understand and review them. It's very important to have that traceability of data throughout the system. And obviously, if we can do that and make those experiences part of a tool set as opposed to a development activity, it also makes it a lot easier for you to upgrade in the future. There's a lot less testing and validation that needs to happen for every interface. The other thing that we've been trying to figure out exactly what we want to be when we grow up around terminology for a while. And I think, you know, we've always had for a very long time highly performant and highly scalable one-to-one code translations. So you say you want to go from CPT4, you know, CPT4 to CPT5 or ICD-9 to ICD-10 or SNOMED or whatever. You can build those maps in whatever terminology management tool you use, import them into HealthShare, and we can transform that data at scale, no problem. But what we really want to start looking at as well is to start tagging metadata onto data based on terminology as well. So using ontologies, using roll-ups to be able to classify medications, classify conditions, tied together a bunch of different codes across multiple code sets into a single term. So we're working through what that's going to look like. If you have specific use cases around this that you've either had to implement on your own or you have chosen to avoid because you don't have the tools in the product right now, please talk to us. We'd love to hear. It'll inform our decisions and hopefully make it a lot easier for us to figure out exactly what part to target first. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back to Sebastian, and he gets to talk about all the cool things the ops team is going to be doing.
Thank you, Matt. There are a lot of cool things that the ops team is doing. Matt's right. First cool thing I want to talk about is the Federation Registry. So we talked about a centralized sort of place where you can get a high-level understanding of your environment. The Federation Registry, we're hoping to make it available in the next release, is a one-stop shop for all of the high-level information about every one of your servers in your HealthShare environment, every one of the instances installed on those servers, and every one of the namespaces configured on those instances installed on those servers in one place with links to all the management portals, and it all comes out of the box, and all of these items get self-registered when you initially set them up, when you initially configure them, and it is just a free tool that you don't have to do any maintenance for. How fun is that? You don't have to do any work. You just get it for free. So we will also the Federation Registry is we're hoping for it to be kind of a starting place for centralization of configuration. So we haven't gotten to this point yet, but we're considering having the Federation Registry be almost a new UI for configuring namespaces. So we have this installer wizard written in Zen. Everyone's familiar with it. We also have a number of UIs and APIs. We have a number of APIs for it. And we're hoping that with the Federation Registry, we can have a nice UI where you can just add a namespace to an existing instance. You can configure all of the ports and listening ports and host names, if there's multiple host names for an instance in this Federation Registry. So it's going to require some enhancements to our installer code. So instance and namespace configuration is going to be redesigned a little bit. It's going to be primarily API driven for creation of HealthShare namespaces and instances. And they will likely replace the existing object script method calls to set up new items, but there will be hopefully REST APIs in their place. Other operational enhancements, we are going to continue our storage reduction crusade, I will call it. We were going to be getting journal file compression free from our Iris platform in our next release. We are going to be working on compressing new and historic SDA data streams on edge gateways. Some numbers that we've seen in testing indicate we might be able to reduce streamlet storage on edges by 50% or more. Final numbers to be determined. We will also be compressing new and historic audit stream data, which is stored in a very similar way, but is going to, I had mentioned that it is, in some cases, 50% or more of the data that's stored on the edge gateways. We need to compress that as well. So that's coming down the pipeline. One of the most exciting things for me is the possibility of new deployment options. So we are actively investigating, actively working on, actively researching and updating our product today to run very well in a container-based environment. So we don't know exactly what the distribution mechanism is going to look like. We don't know if we're going to be putting Docker images up on the WRC or if we're going to be doing something different. But the long-term goal for us is for Unified Care Record and all HealthShare products to be deployable in containers in your favorite cloud provider. So we're going to be starting with Patient Index. Patient Index is a high value use case for us to containerize and moving on to the other products from there. The nice thing about moving to containers is that we can take advantage of some of the technology available in these cloud environments, things like elastic scalability. So we can, if we're doing a large data ingestion, if we're setting up a large number of new patients, we can potentially in the future spin up parts of a new unified care record environment elastically, and then after the ingestion is complete, spin them right back down. So really kind of taking advantage of what's available in modern technology in the cloud. So, and of course, orchestration support, Kubernetes and whatnot, that goes right along with it. So in addition to container support, we're going to be deploying, excuse me, we're going to be distributing HealthShare kits in the future with InterSystems Package Manager support. So the InterSystems Package Manager grew from the community-based ZPM utility. Some of you may or may not have heard of it. It's great. It's really cool. You can get open source stuff and download it onto your Iris or Iris for Health instance. At this time, HealthShare products do not support ZPM, but in the future, ZPM is going to be rebranded, or it might have already been rebranded to InterSystems Package Manager, and HealthShare customers on their HealthShare instances will be able to manage their live UAT, et cetera, deployments with package manager automation. These repositories that hold packages, that hold data, they can be online, they can be on the internet, they can be a private repository, they can be behind your firewall, they can be pre-scanned artifacts that you stand up in your internal repositories. They can be secure or they can be open source. And you'd be able to install new features in Unified Care Record or any one of the HealthShare products almost with a click of a button, or update existing components effectively with the click of a button using the InterSystems package manager. So 2 very exciting new deployment options. I'm very excited to talk to anybody who's willing to listen, so please come up to me at some point to discuss, and I'll try not to talk your ear off totally, but at least partially. So, next steps here. We have 2 additional sessions that you might have interest in attending. I will be talking about updates in security in the HealthShare suite tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. It will be one of the last sessions of the day, so it's going to be dressed down. You can wear shorts and a baseball cap if you'd like. And Leah Goddard will be talking about time to value, reducing the time and cost of your implementation. When is that, Leah? 1:30 p.m. tomorrow, time to value. You can connect with Matt or I at our email addresses or our LinkedIn profiles, or you can call the InterSystems main number and have Sandy transfer you to us. I would start with email. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions for us, please? Yes, Anil.
You mentioned that message header you will be putting in the Streamlit. How does it go for the multiple messages for same patient? So if I have like 200 ADT events coming in, will it create 200 message header Streamlits?
Yes. So the message header the message header Streamlit is not really targeted directly at the unified care record. But because the SDA model and the transforms to and from the SDA model are owned by us, and a lot of our customers who are Unified Care Record customers are also Health Connect customers, it's sort of relevant to the discussion. So the short answer is no, you're not going to be generating for every ADT that comes in a message header Streamlit that's being stored in your edge gateway. We use the same class library that does the V2 to SDA transformation, but I believe there's a flag in there that controls it to make sure that you're not dumping message headers into your edge.
We're trying to reduce storage.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, quick question. Oh, it's louder than I thought. I use my inside voice. So we talked about, you kind of touched on a little these Kubernetes deployments, everything containerized. How, as far as the customizations we make, things that aren't in the box, right? When that Kubernetes operator comes and just says, "Wait, we don't need this anymore," and just kills it dead. How do we save that off? Is there some sort of volume mapping to something external that's referenced afterwards, or?
Yeah. So the way that we are, one of the things that we've had to do to work around the way the product is designed currently and getting it to work in containers is solving for durable storage and making sure that we've got the right mappings in place for durable storage. So for example, we put files like for our web pages and that kind of, for Angular web pages, in places where you typically wouldn't in a containerized deployment with Iris. So specifically in the MGR directory. And so a lot of the work that we've been doing is to actually figure out what needs to be remapped in order to make sure that we can have durable storage that doesn't include application code. So if you are adding additional components in, so for example, you're pulling in your own classes, plopping them in productions, hopefully you're doing all those code changes in another database other than HSlib, and in exactly right. So basically, you would just want to make sure that you have that database mapped to a durable storage volume.
Okay. And I guess my confusion was where, since like on single instance, right, you have a durable storage, but Oh, yeah. Hey. But like when you're talking about the whole suite, that's I guess where my confusion started, because now you're going to need a bunch of different locations. And
You're going to have to update your YAML to include that volume and that configuration information as part of deployment of that image. Longer term, as we get further down this evolution of, sort of moving more from a service-oriented architecture to more of a microservices architecture with a lot of the HealthShare components, those types of problems that you're describing will sort of disappear as we start to separate persistence and business logic and sort of get to a much more naturally, elastically scalable mode.
Is there a plan to split the data ever? Like rather than a single cache.dat or iris.dat on the edge? It's huge.
Yes. Any other question? No, we're working on it. We've already done it successfully for some of the large globals, right? So the HSIHE audit global, that's our audit repository. We can apply subscript level mappings to have that across multiple iris.dat, cache.dat, iris.dat files. We're doing that right now for the Carat HS audit. That's the audit data that's in the edges I mentioned. There are a number of document registry globals. So it's all about how large the globals are, how they are structured in code, and the developers are working on identifying what are the top 10 globals that we have here. How do we come up with automation? How do we come up with mechanisms to separate those out of the box? So we have manual steps at this point for a number of those globals. We have some automation for other globals as well. I mentioned automatically mapping the HS audit into a new database on new edge gateway creation. And we're going to be continuing to do that where possible. So yeah, absolutely.
So in that, in terms of your strategy, it's just by the ID or some other subscripts, or you want to go more,
It depends on the particular use case. Yeah, all the globals are written in different ways, right? They have different use cases. So whatever mechanism they can be separated, they will be. At a higher level, we're trying to come up with a strategy to sort of have at a high level for all of the globals, for all of the data, but that's proving to be a little bit more difficult. So we're kind of having to do individual guerrilla attacks on large globals.
Okay, I was thinking more towards if you have any strategy to split it by timestamp or something where data older than a certain date is on a separate file, which I don't even touch it because I.
You mean clinical data or
clinical data?
Yeah,
Yes,
clinical data.
Sort of a partitioning kind of an idea.
So I can give a very.
I'll give part of the answer.
You give part of the
I'll give part of
Let's
the
see
answer.
if they line up.
Let's see. So InterSystems Iris data platform has new tools that they are working on developing today for things like table partitioning, in which new indices are added, things like that. We are going to be relying on that when that's available. In addition.
So I'm going to channel our director of development for HealthShare, who unfortunately is not here right now. There's sort of from a high level sort of guiding principles in terms of the direction we want to go with the platform technology-wise. One of the things that we want to start doing is leaning much more heavily on the advancements that have been happening within the SQL engine, and in particular, some of the work that's been done around sharding. Sharding has matured quite a bit over the last few releases. And so in addition to, as we mentioned, I think in the Health Insight work, focusing on sharding for the next 12 to 18 months within Health Insight, on a longer horizon, we're looking at sharding as potentially one in a number of tools as we start to rework parts of the product to make it fit into more of a cloud environment where you want the elasticity of compute, but you want your storage to be separate from that so that you don't have to sort of lump them both together and pay for, have those costs tied together. So the answer is yes, we are looking at ways of implementing tiered storage. I can't give you any kind of time horizon on it. It's definitely not 12 months. But particularly as we get more customers who are in Azure, in Google, in AWS, and they all offer a fairly identical set of tools around things like object storage and other kinds of technologies. We're very keen to adopt those where they make sense to do things exactly like you're talking about. Take data from 12 years ago and make sure that that's on low-performing media, but still online, but sort of what they call warm storage.